Welcome to At Home with the Johnsons. With me, Lisa.
And me, Sam.
We're going to be discussing a load of different issues about having a multi-seven-figure business and what life is like. So we'll be talking life and we'll be talking a bit of business. But we'll also be talking some controversial topics, but we want you to get involved too.
Because we do love a debate.
We love a debate.
And if you want to get involved in the debate, you can join us on our Facebook group At Home with the Johnsons.
Okay, so today's podcast is going to be talking about, well, a few things, like parenting. I think we need to talk about that. There's a lot of things I want to talk about on there. And also like the gender roles of parenting. Because I think one of the things that we get asked about a lot is obviously most people know you do the majority of the parenting, you do the cooking and all of that kind of stuff, and I don't. And how that works in a world where still in the main, traditional gender roles are perceived as the norm.
I think they are the norm in a lot of the families in the UK. I think I've been given a slightly skewed perspective on this because it seems the norm to me and our kids, and so to them they've been brought up thinking that this is the way it always is.
But you've seen like the everyday sexism.
Do you know what? It really gets my back up, and it's funny because before, in my previous marriage, my role was quite a traditional one, really. In that I went to work, I came home, I didn't really do much of the childcare, I didn't really do the cooking. I took the boys to football. I did, sort of what you would call dad
traditional
things,
dad
old school
things.
dad things. And so when we got together, I quickly realised that you're not cooking, right? That's not happening.
No.
It's really not a thing that our kids or us want. So
I can actually cook one thing.
One thing. We can't eat chicken and chorizo risotto every night of our life.
But you're saying it like I can't cook. I cook that well.
It's very nice, but
what was that phrase?
That relates to the state of my beautiful, clean kitchen when you've finished.
You tell me cooking is not the same as cleaning up after cooking.
It's all part and parcel of the same thing.
No.
Yeah, you take ownership. You can't be like, do half the job. Anyway, so, yeah, my life was very different in my previous marriage. And so I feel I'm in a position to understand that it's not acceptable to say these are the rules, this is how it works, because you can change and you can start to do things differently.
I just always think with things like this, as a family, there are a load of stuff you have to do. There is money that you have to make to pay for things. There is cooking that you have to do. There is household things. There's the finances. There's looking after the kids. There's a whole range of things. Mm-hmm. Rather than basing who does what on gender, why don't we base who does what on who's good at them?
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? I suppose historically it was based in that way because it was very much the norm that the man would go out to work and be gone for most of the day, so he wasn't allowed to do things.
These days, pretty much always it's both working. Yeah. And yet, the onus is, the woman's going to work now, but also do all of those other things that she was supposed to do.
So what we do is, you're right, we just look at our skill sets and go, who's best suited to this task?
Yeah, like I do the finances.
Yeah.
I'm the breadwinner. You're really good with kids. You're really good at organising what happens with the house and the household stuff.
Also, I would do things with them like, I don't know, if they want to go out and play football and stuff that I'm actually quite good at. I don't want.
But also you have patience. So you'll also sit there and do a puzzle with them for 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, they have the strengths
no
in
one needs that.
I would never want you to teach them how to drive either. I mean...
I think I'm a good driver.
Your rationale when you come to a situation that might require some management is the other cars have brakes.
But that is the truth.
And that is what you say. So there's no need for you to stop because they will stop.
Well, they will do.
And also, you do, while we're talking about gender roles and that kind of stuff, I
feel like you're going off on one.
All right, I'll come back to it. Let's stop there.
No, go.
You utilise the strengths at your disposal if there was a man driving the other car.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, I'm so sorry. That one, which you do a lot, and you know you do.
You can get away with a lot.
Exactly.
With a smile.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've only crashed 2 cars.
And one was an Aston Martin, I believe.
Yes. It's not the point. It could have been anything.
I feel that any car bigger than a go-kart is a bit of an issue for you.
I feel like you had a crash.
Someone crashed into me.
Doesn't matter.
It's back on the matter in hand.
Okay, the matter on hand is we should do the things that we're good at.
Yeah, 100%.
And so when you are in a WhatsApp group with a load of parents, as you were at the school that the boys were at previously,
Yeah.
you had some issues.
Well, this group was called the Parents Group.
Not mums.
Not mums, right? Not every single one. The vast majority of posts in there was started with "Hello, ladies," every time, and it used to drive me flipping.
You used to do that passive-aggressive emoji wave.
I just did a
every
wave.
time.
Hiya. I think because I'm called Sam, they thought there's a chance that
I know, but you did tell them quite a few times.
And I think having met me, they probably got a fairly clear heads up that I was.
But they still said, "Hey, ladies."
Yeah, and I think it's just really crap, and it's really lazy, and it's really dangerous, and this is a really different world that we live in now, and just doesn't take much, does it?
No.
To steer away from those outdated kind of generic attitudes.
Whereas I got the opposite. So I'd go to the school gates, and they'd go. I probably went, 3 times in my entire life?
Yeah, about that.
And every single time I got, it must be so, are you away again? Are you going to LA? Oh, it must be so difficult for you being away from the boys all the time. It must be so hard for them. Go away. That is what I thought every single time, because there is no way that their misguided faux sympathy was coming from a place of good.
Do you remember the other thing they say to me? Oh, aren't you good?
Oh.
Aren't you good for being able to make them a packed lunch? Yeah, I can cut bread up and I can put crisps in a bag. I'm
taking them
genius,
to school.
I am. Yeah.
You're literally walking down the road with them.
No, yeah. Aren't you good?
Don't worry that I'm in a board meeting with loads of very influential people.
It's offensive to me and other men to have that patronising tone of you've actually managed to get your kids dressed, put them in a car and make them a sandwich. That's a huge achievement apparently for the vast majority of men in this country.
Yeah, I got looked down a lot at those school gates, and so much so that I just stopped going.
No, you used to go and get really dressed up and put on all your best gear.
That's just my normal clothes.
No, but you went up a level because they'd all be there in their Uggs and their
activewear.
Going to school in the activewear, yeah.
Even though they're not actually doing anything active.
They never went active, but I think we're kind of stereotyping a bit here, to be fair. But yeah, it was frustrating, and I think it's massively outdated. It didn't help that it was Middle England, middle class, middle school.
No.
And it was as kind of old school, pardon the pun, as you could ever find, wasn't it? There was very little diversity of any sort in that group. I mean, one of our kids was talked about in whispers because he had long hair.
Yeah, do you remember that?
I think one of them spotted I had a tattoo once, and they were like, "Oh, what's going on here?"
I know, it does get a bit ridiculous. And I think we have a different way of parenting as well. And I've been quite open about the fact that after much discussion with you and the boys' dad, we decided to put them into a private school at the beginning of secondary school. And you didn't want them to, their dad didn't want them to, but I was quite we should give them, if we've got the money for it, we should give them the best chance.
We come from slightly different political beliefs. I've always been a bit more of a lefty, and I don't feel like money should buy you a better education. However, I then balanced it out with some kind of objectivity, seeing the kids grow up and seeing the advantages that this school would bring them. Then we agreed that it would be the best bet.
They lasted
3 months.
3 months. They didn't like it.
Well, one of them liked it more than the other, to be fair, but yeah.
They didn't love it. But mainly, it was so outdated in the way they thought about gender roles that it just was never going to work. So you have to, you get an invoice for the fees, which were quite a lot. And I was paying 100% of those fees. Their dad wasn't. We'd come to that agreement. That was absolutely fine. But they insisted that the invoice had to go to their father. And I was like, but he's not paying it, I am. But we have to send it to him. He'll have to send it to you. After all of this work that we'd done, bringing the boys up to see this really equal world where, it was more unusual for them to see a man going out to work than it was to see a woman.
Well, they didn't the gender wasn't relevant to what was
No,
happening in the family
at all.
dynamic, and that's so it didn't even come into a discussion, did it?
No,
With us?
and yet suddenly it was like I could see that school was going to mean that they were going to think a different way, because you can't be like that in a school and it not filter down into education. Well, we found out there was no girls were allowed to play football and stupid things like that. So we knew very quickly.
There was a few things, wasn't there? The boys did rugby, the girls did hockey. You know, we just watched the Lionesses win the World Cup and have the biggest following ever, and yet the girls weren't allowed to play football at their school. It was just, it drove me mad. And even things like our boys and all the boys were made to play rugby every Saturday morning at school after having very long days, Monday to Friday.
Even if they hated
making
rugby.
Kids do something they hate in the freezing cold and rain will not make them like it the following week. That's not how it works. No. So they were very misguided. And
but the girls didn't have to do that every Saturday morning.
No, they had to do hockey every Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Or whatever they were classed
and
as.
Albert was going through a time at that time, one of our kids, where he didn't really know what his gender was. No. And he was very happy with not having a gender at that time. And he went to school and they said, all the boys have to line up over here and all the girls over here. And he said, what about me?
That's right.
And they said, well, just get in with the boys.
They said you can choose.
Oh, you can choose.
And the whole point was that he didn't want to be choosing.
He didn't want to choose. You can choose whether you're a boy or a girl. And he was like, I don't want to choose any. Why do I have to get in a line based on gender? Why can't I just get in a line?
Yeah. So despite the opportunities that undoubtedly gave them the smaller class size, the less disruption in class, the more engaged teaching staff, I believe all these facts were true. It wasn't right.
No, and we took them out. We put them in like their local school, which hasn't got the greatest Ofsted rating.
Do you know what was so funny about the local school? Because obviously I went to a pretty basic comprehensive, and they came home one day and they went, there was a fight.
Yeah, like it was the first fight they'd ever seen.
Yeah, and no, there was a fight. Yeah. Then
that's
what?
Normal.
And the kids made a circle around the fight so the teachers couldn't get in. I was like,
that's normal.
That's kind of just how it goes. So it was a bit of an eye-opener. I think we have maybe protected them from stuff like that a little bit with the way we brought them up.
Yeah, I think that we have now given them a school where they're really happy.
They love it.
And they've got really good friends, where they don't have very good education. But does it matter?
I think it does matter, but I think at the age of that, just for another year or so, it's not going to have a huge impact. What we will see is in the next 2-3 years leading up towards GCSEs, where they stand then. And we may have to think about what we do, because also the school where our kids are at has only just become a secondary, hasn't it? So next year is the first year of GCSEs that's ever been done at this school.
But I do wonder whether all this GCSEs and A-levels is even important anymore. Like, if you look at the curriculum and what we still make kids go through, there's nothing on the curriculum about, like, a growth mindset or entrepreneurship or any of those
even
kinds of
basics.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're doing, what I quite appreciate at the moment is they're doing, what's it called, food tech. I quite like that one. They're actually learning how to cook. I mean, there's a proper life skill that you're going to need when you go. No one wants to know about Oxbow Lakes, are they, and that kind of stuff. Well, who cares about that?
I guess some people do need to know that in their job.
Who?
Geographicians.
Geographicians? I've never met a geographician. I wonder what they're like.
Yeah,
you understand the point I'm making. I'm being slightly flippant about it, but I did think about this the other night when my brain was doing one of its nighttime wanderings.
You do think about weird things at night?
Yeah, I do. I was thinking about dolphins the other night, and if they could walk, would they be in charge?
Why would they be in charge?
They're really clever, aren't they? They can talk. They've been around long enough.
They can't talk.
They can.
The dolphin can't talk.
They talk to each other.
Well, they make a noise.
They're really clever, but that's what I just wondered about. Is it only their inability to get out of the sea that's stopping them?
No.
No?
Okay. That's not the only
thing. All right,
thing.
anyway, what was I thinking about? Oh yeah, just school and the curriculum at school. It's random, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you think about it, English I understand. We need to be able to write, and maths I sort of understand to a point.
Yeah.
There are, but like things like history and geography and stuff.
History we need.
Why?
Because we can only learn from our past
I don't
issues.
think learning about Jethro Tull's seed drill helped me become.
Do you know what it helped me do?
What?
Knowing exactly who made the seed drill made me win £28,000
I can't believe that was the question.
on a TV game show.
I would have got that one too.
I got it, everyone looked at me like, how the hell does she know that?
surprised you
I don't
know
even
it.
know how I knew.
Because for all my talk about it being, because I think you can decide if you want to get into history when you're older. That's what I did. I'm really into history now. But just throwing out them as a couple of examples, I do think the curriculum is flawed. And what I will also say about the school curriculum is you're usually rewarding the kids with the best memories. Yeah.
Well, I did that.
So in most subjects, maths, English literature, science, history,
It's just
who
memory.
can remember the most facts.
Well, my
and
law
write them
degree was
down.
that. If I'm honest about it, the reason I did well in law degree is I have a photographic memory.
Yeah. Well, that's not. What about the kids who are really bright, but they just don't have that kind of memory that retains the info?
Yeah, we don't really do testing well,
No.
I don't think. But I do also think there needs to be a different type of curriculum. But loads of entrepreneurs now are homeschooling.
Yeah.
They're putting them on these online schools.
That's a whole other topic for debate about education, isn't it? Because I can see the benefits of that, but I stand by. I think they lose the engagement, the friend building, the physical, tactile side of having friends,
Social
and
side.
it's social interrelationships and that kind of thing. If you're not,
Yeah, but they can also then not have bullying, exclusion.
of course, I understand that there's pros and cons, but I do feel like a big chunk of growing up is that interaction and that social.
You can have that in other ways. Does that have to be at school?
Doesn't have to be at school, but how are you going to make the friends locally to have that interaction with if you're not going to school to meet the other kids?
I feel like there must be ways. But we tried homeschooling anyway for 6 months.
Yeah, well, we did it in COVID as well. Everyone did, didn't they?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
I did it in COVID.
But after COVID, we chose to homeschool for 6 months and realised at the end of that 6 months we would never, ever be doing it again.
Because another topic related to parenting is there's nothing wrong with admitting you quite like getting rid of your kids.
Yeah,
There's
that's
nothing
true.
wrong with that
We all
at
need
all.
space to be us.
When you have them around 24 hours a day for 6 months in a row,
It's also really hard to work properly.
Mm-hmm.
People always go, like, I saw this thing on the internet this morning where this woman said to her husband, she was pregnant, and she was like, oh, when the kid comes along, I don't really want to go on maternity leave. Like, I'm very happy to go back to work. I don't think I'm going to be a stay-at-home mum. And he was like, oh, well, I work remotely from home anyway, so I'll watch the kid. And it was like,
it was a bit of an eye-opener.
who's going to tell him?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. And like, when the kids are there, you literally can't work.
Everyone has the best plans until they have them, and then it becomes a very different kettle of fish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel that we have also, because they go and see their dad, me being their stepdad, they go and see their dad every 2 weeks. So we get every other weekend to do like grown-up stuff. I love it.
It is the best.
I don't love them any less because I love a
but
weekend
you do
away.
want a weekend on our
love it.
own. It's the best perk of divorce.
Most
that.
of our mates who have been through the same thing will say exactly the same.
Yeah,
There's
you
a
get a
lot
weekend
of
off.
crap with divorce and problems that arise because of it, but having that every other weekend to do grown-up stuff, I tell you.
No,
love
it is good.
Proper love it.
Let's talk about, because ours at the moment are on a phone ban.
Oh yeah, that's going down well, isn't
It's
it?
not going down well. I feel like there's an addiction to phones
100%,
at the moment. And by taking it away, it helps them use their imaginations to do some other stuff. It's helped one of ours do that, who is really getting on well. And the other one has decided that he's just going to be in a mood for a week until he gets his phone back.
He was he was less of a sulky teenager than the other one, wasn't he? But he's become Kevin overnight. Oh my God. The strops that we're seeing now are
But that's why we
unbelievable.
need to do it, I think.
But the problem with it is, and I touched on this before, if you're weaning someone off drugs, you wean them off the drugs, they go cold turkey, it's horrible. You don't then give them the drugs back for like an hour a day, which is probably what we'll do. You say you're never having them drugs again. But I can't imagine saying to a 13-year-old, you're never having a mobile phone
Let's talk
again.
about that, because there is a school of thought. There's a big old thing on the internet that kids should not have phones until they're 16. And people are saying, because some kids have phones, that's why their friends want phones. So if everybody gets together and bans kids from having phones at all until they're 16, that won't happen. Thoughts?
It's self-perpetuating because you'll never get the sign up from everyone to stop kids having it unless it's a
law.
legally
That's what they want.
implemented law. I don't think it'll ever happen because of the loss of revenue to the mobile phone companies.
But do you think if it did happen, it would be a good thing? Because I don't.
I don't necessarily think it would. I think some people go too far. You think about what I know there's some dodgy stuff online, but the good stuff they can learn online, the way they can educate themselves, when they're doing their homework, the stuff they can find out.
But also, if the world is becoming more technological. Like it just is. That's how everything's going. I feel like in 20 years' time, we'll all be wired to a machine and most of us will be living in like the metaverse anyway. But regardless of that, it is more technological. Those kids that learn how to use things online quicker and understand that, like ours understand coding almost as if it's a normal thing, like lots of people do now, they are more likely to do well in the future. Whereas it didn't used to be that way. But I think that by just saying tech is bad, end all tech until they're a certain age, all that's going to happen is they're going to get to 16 and then have to go through whatever they're going to go through with it.
It's a little bit like the whole alcohol thing, right? Like our kids, I'll have a sip of that wine. We'll let them have a little taste of the wine. Because if you're stopping these things from being something you can't mention, you know, something like,
like it's a big thing.
Yeah, then when the time comes when they can have it, they're going to jump all over it.
Yeah.
So if you give them that little bit of education and that little bit of awareness, that then they'd be more mature about how they handle it.
Well, Finn's had a little sip of drink with meals when we're drinking since he was about 5 or 6, and he's now not bothered about it.
If you make it taboo, it just makes it the thing that they...
Well, like if you look at teenage pregnancies, in Amsterdam, they have the lowest
all of the Netherlands.
Yeah, they have the lowest teenage pregnancy rate because they talk about sex from a really young age. Here, we don't talk about sex. It's so taboo, and we've got one of the highest pregnancy ratings. So there is something to this, just letting people be aware of things without it being a taboo subject really young.
I agree.
And we've tried to be like that with most things.
I wouldn't ban the phones, no, to answer your question. I wouldn't be in favour of that, primarily for the reasons that you just said. But it does then open up the whole debate about how you manage it, how you stop them having too much time on it. Maybe this little break that we've given them will open their eyes to the fact that they can manage without it. And if they manage it sensibly and responsibly in a more mature manner, we're less likely to say to them again, we've taken them away.
I don't know whether Finn can manage without it.
I'm not sure either.
He was getting to that point where, and I'm sure there'll be people listening that have had this happen to them, he was doing up his shoe while looking at the phone.
Cleaning his teeth while looking at it.
Yeah, and it can't be like that. Like, small amounts of time on a screen, I think, is not a bad thing. Yeah. Like, I don't believe in banning anything.
But going back, just as an aside here, I think we agree on that phone one. We do disagree on a fair amount of stuff, though, don't we, about parenting?
Massively.
You know, and I don't know if that's a bad thing. It opens up a debate, and sometimes it can be a bit heated. But what it does mean is they're getting a very balanced...
They get a balanced view.
Parenting view.
Yeah, because I'm a bit like choose your battles with things, and you're stricter than me.
And then factor in their dad as well. And I know he's not quite there around as much as we are, but he still has an opinion. So they are getting quite a balanced opinion.
Real balanced, because his is like, kids should be feral.
Yeah. He thinks they're still in 1970s Ireland.
Yeah. And they should be allowed to just do whatever they like and stay up till whenever they like. Yeah. You're very strict on, like, it's 9:30, you're going to bed.
I think I'm old. Genuinely, I am quite old. And so in my generation, it was more like that. There was no negotiating with your parents.
Yeah, they negotiate all the time.
You did the thing you were told to do. And like the boys come into our bedroom, I wasn't allowed in my mum and dad's bedroom. It was like, you know, no chance. It was like the Tutankhamun's tomb. I couldn't get in there.
And you're like, if they try and talk to you, and like you're like, no, go and do this thing, and they go, well, no, I don't want to, and this is why. You go a bit crazy.
But what I do, and I believe I've learned this since I had my own kids. If I do something wrong, I go and apologise to the boys now.
Yeah.
And I'll sit down with them and
go... If you shout or lose your rag.
I'll go, I'm really sorry. It's not a great role model for you to shout at you, but I'm a human being. Just because I'm grown up, it doesn't mean I'm perfect. So I will lose my temper and I will get it wrong, but understand that I am big enough to admit to you that I've got it wrong. I never did that with my own kids.
I just find it difficult because... Sometimes when you're telling them off, I find them funny.
I know you do.
When they're doing something bad.
Like you and Albert looking at each other, get a little glimpse over my shoulder, and I turn around and then you're doing that. I'll go back to him and he's doing that. Go back to you. It's a nightmare.
Well, I'm trying to get him in trouble so that you just tell him off.
You and Finn end up parenting you two.
I know.
Half the time. Because you and Albert are like peas in a pod. You've got the same sense of humour. And when I need you to be like my wing woman here.
I can't do it.
And I turn around and you're just giggling.
Because sometimes you tell him off and it's not worth it. Like, let him do it.
Trouble is with me, once I get a bee in my bonnet,
I know, you'll carry
I find
on with
it really hard to let it go.
And then you'll be telling him off, and you'll look at me, and over your shoulder, he'll roll his eyes at me, and then I'll start laughing, and then you'll tell me off.
I think we're doing all right because they have their moments, right?
Yeah, they're mostly... Someone did right. When we asked people what you want to hear about on the podcast, somebody put, how have you made such polite, grounded boys when you've got all this money?
I don't know if money's got anything to do with it, but I suppose money gives
either.
privilege, which sometimes gives an expectation, which can lead to precociousness. I feel maybe that's the root. But I think we've always been very upfront with ours. We've always been very inclusive in adult situations.
And we've instilled in them the value of money massively.
And I'll talk about being old. One of the old-fashioned things that is fundamentally never goes out of fashion is please and thank you and manners and respect. And the amount of kids that, not just kids, there's adults as well, people who don't say please and thank you drive me nuts.
Yeah, you go.
It's not a difficult thing, is it?
No.
And so that's why they are, and I've always said, they can be a bit stroppy with me and you. It's kind of a kid's job to pee off their parents.
Stroppy with us.
If they ever come back from someone else's house and the parents go, oh, they weren't very good, then we've got a massive problem.
That's never happened, to be fair.
Happened.
They always say, oh, they're such good kids, and we're like, sometimes. But I think most kids do that. They're better for everybody else than they are for you.
I think if you get the fundamental values right, respect, openness, acceptance, politeness, all those things, if you get them right, the stuff on the top when they're stroppy because, I don't know, they've just lost at FIFA or something. You can kind of deal with that.
Like when we go on first class planes a lot at the moment. That might change, but at the moment we do. And we are always told every single time with the boys, as we're getting off the plane, one of the air stewardesses or stewards would come up to us, cabin crew, and say, I can't believe how polite and how good your kids are.
It's lovely, isn't it? And I can't deny that it's a lovely thing to hear.
Yeah, but they've cottoned on now because
we
were in Yo Sushi last week, and one of them, like, they were asking for what they wanted to eat, and one of the women came over to me and kind of half whispered, oh, I absolutely love him. I love the way he's always so polite. He's just such a character, such a good kid, and walked away. And they heard, and they both then looked over and went, who was she talking about?
Which one was talking about?
Which one? And I was like, well, I don't know. It could be.
But then afterwards, they were both like, oh, thank you
so much. You're amazing.
Oh,
you
this
were
was
so
gorgeous.
amazing.
I loved it. Yeah.
Just trying to make it be them.
Yeah. But like we say, I feel that I'd rather it that way because sometimes it's a fine line between confidence and being precocious, isn't it? And that's the hardest thing to manage, I think. You want them to be confident, you want them to be outgoing, you want them to be able to hold a conversation with an adult, but you don't want them to overstep that mark when they just go a bit too far and people are like, oh.
I think sometimes Finn sounds precocious.
Yeah, he can do a bit, but that's because he sounds so posh.
I don't know why he sounds posh. Like, none of us are posh. And he's suddenly got this voice. And when we were on the train once, coming home, and he was about 4 years old, and he said two things in the space of an hour, really loudly on the train, in his little tiny posh voice. And the first thing he said was, Mummy, do you remember when we had afternoon tea in the Shard? And I was like, oh, God. Like, I was taking the piss out of that kid.
Where we were staying, he said, do you think they'll have smoked salmon with breakfast? We were like, oh my God. Everyone on the train thinking, oh, no.
Don't be that kid.
I think I then turned into a proper cockney and
tried to level it out
a bit, yeah.
You do that every time you're in a taxi, to be fair.
You say I do, I know.
You're comming it up. So, yeah, parenting, to summarise, there is no right or wrong.
There is no right or wrong.
People will tell you how you should be a parent before they're even one, and definitely when they've had kids. And actually, everyone parents a different way, and what's right for you might not be right for somebody else.
And I would add, you never stop learning, never be afraid to admit you've done something wrong, and enjoy the nice bits when they're young, because it goes so quick.
So I want to know from you guys, if you have any kind of bans on tech or social media, come into the Facebook group at Home with the Johnsons. Let me know how you deal with an addiction to screens, because we need to know this one. You've been listening to At Home with the Johnsons.
Why not come and join the discussion at our Facebook group at Home with the Johnsons?
Go and check the link in the show notes.